Well, hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am thrilled you're here because we are kicking off a 3-part series all about webinars. Yep, we're tackling the beast that, quite frankly, webinars is this topic that people get really heated about. And I think I know, you know what I mean. I get some coffee because this one's going to be a rally up. Maybe you've most likely hosted a webinar in your business or you're thinking about it, but I would bet 99% of you have attended a webinar or a quote unquote free masterclass, which most likely the feeling from those is you've probably attended a few great ones. Maybe you've most likely attended a lot that were letdowns, that were 20 minutes of the person going into their life story, followed by generic advice that you already knew coming into it, where you were a little bit like, no-ish, Sherlock. And then it's into a train of testimonials and a sales pitch. It didn't really feel like a training. It was just a sales video done live. And it left you feeling like, ugh. Because here's the crazy part is that you always see these people tout that it works. People join their programs. The question is, can you create a webinar, a selling mechanism that feels good and allows people to sign up? That is the big question. And I guess the bigger question is, are webinars, is the tactic of webinars still relevant in today's marketing world? Because I'm sure you felt it too. There's quite the rumbling online of people griping around, we're kind of done with the inauthentic selling. We're starting to question, just because things have always been this way, do we have to do them that way? How can we sell and serve while making our people feel great, but not compromise sales? What is that balance between selling and serving, and how do you really do them effectively together without sacrificing your integrity? Or let's just go with that. Without sacrificing your integrity, you don't have to feel schmucky all the time. So in the next 3 episodes, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover today, I'm going to talk about the specific shifts that I want you starting to make if you want to do webinars successfully in this new world of online marketing. As we move into 2022, I don't want you to blindly follow the templates online. I want you to be equipped to be able to challenge those and know what to change with reason, not just because it feels weird or you saw somebody complaining about it online. So today we're going to dive into those specific shifts. Then next week on episode 123, I'm going to teach you the secret on crafting valuable webinars that your audience sees as valuable and effective ones. So ones that actually give value and convert. There is this thing that you hear about all the time, that a big mistake that people make is that they overteach. In fact, that's one of the things that I teach inside my webinar, is this idea that we, in this pursuit of not being fluffy, we get so tactical, so tangible, we give so much to our audience that they actually don't need our programs. But on the flip side is, if you hold back and just do the fluffy, teach the why and the what does that even mean? When you do that, it feels like you're not giving them anything. So you are just fueling that normalcy that webinars are fluffy. And then people still are not buying your program because they're annoyed by the fluffy nature. So what a conundrum. We're going to dive into that next week and actually talk about what is that balance between the two, and how do you effectively add value without dishonoring without overwhelming your audience or holding so much back that they feel kind of burned. In episode 124, so in 2 weeks, we're going to talk through my 3 secret scripting secrets. 3 secret script. Wow, I need to retitle that one. 3 scripting secrets for authentic and effective webinars. The scripting piece, the formulaic nature of webinars, is one of the biggest things that people are turned off by. However, the formulas work. The challenge with it is how you actually talk about them. And while I don't really encourage a lot of scripting, I'm actually a huge fan of not scripting. Instead, practice, don't memorize, but practice and get more familiar. I do highly recommend that certain places of your webinar, you do script. And I'm going to give you the secrets that I specifically do myself on that, and what I teach my clients on where they can script, so that way they can be more effective and authentic. Because we've all had those webinar scripts, right? Or you've seen them, or you've heard them, where people say the same things and you're like, oh, you try to say it and you're like, this just feels, she told me to say this, but it just feels off. I'm going to teach you how to navigate that one in 2 weeks. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about webinars. And the big question is, are webinars still relevant in today's world? what is a webinar? Let's actually just clarify that. In this world here, and I know those of you with real life teaching experience, especially those who have backgrounds in instruction design, adult learning theory. I see a lot of instruction designers online get very heated around people are not following true adult learning theory and instruction design processes. And I'm not using that voice to make fun of you or belittle you in any way. My background is in those things. I was the vice president of learning and development at a very large organization who fundamentally structured training online and in person. That was my job, to lead the team of instructional designers and trainers and human resource professionals to help our clients be more successful. So I hear you. I understand that there are technical things that make a workshop versus a training versus whatever. But what we need to acknowledge is that we are in the marketing space. We are not in the quote unquote learning and education space. If you have an online business and you sell courses and programs, you are in the marketing space. So I want you to be real clear that the language that's used, it's going to be a little different. So the reason why I wound that up and set it up, the terms workshop, training, webinar, and masterclass are all used interchangeably online. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just the marketing language that has been commonly used. So the question I always get, well, like, what should I call it? I am sure there is some specific scientific-y way to determine that, but here's my take. Pick the name that's going to resonate most for your audience. Personally, for me, I hate the term webinars because of the very clear delineation between webinars and selling. So I call my webinars trainings, or I got rid of masterclasses because I feel like that's really overused too. But trainings, and in 2022, I'm actually going to be using more of a workshop model. The difference for me with workshops is it means it's more interactive. So I'm going to be testing webinars more in the workshop form in 2022, more to come on that. But what is it, right? What actually is a webinar? And I actually wrote down some things here, so I want to read it here. Here's what I wrote down. A webinar is an online training designed to address your ideal customer's most pressing problem, help them understand why the problem persists, i.e. why it happens, why what they've tried isn't working, and then show them what they need to do to address it. That is its simplest fashion around what is a webinar. So let me say that again. It's designed to address your ideal customer's most pressing problem, help them understand why that problem persists, and show them what they need to do to address it. This is the most simplistic definition I can give you, and I want you to pay attention to a couple things. One, the most pressing problem. One of the challenges I see a lot of people make is they make webinars on an abstract topic that's a little bit too general, and then they wonder why people aren't signing up. Number one, we need a specific pressing problem from your audience. Number two, this one is real big, real big. Why is this problem persisting? So many coaches and course creators make the mistake of jumping straight to here is the solution. And here's why we do this. We jump to the solution because we are so sick of the webinars that are just fluffy fests of like, oh, you need to think bigger. It's about working smarter, not harder. And all these other memes and quotables that you see online that are all generic fluff, right? We're like, but like, why am I not getting traction with my reels? Like, or whatever the problem is, right? What we need to do is give context to help our audiences think about the problem. Because here is the most important thing. If you want to effectively sell your program, you have to not only demonstrate that your product or program solves their problem, but you have to help them see how it fits in the bigger picture. So example, for you, I help you with speaking. Every single week you show up. Hopefully you show up. And if you're new here, welcome. Hope you continue to show up. My whole mission is here to help you get more confident articulating what it is that you do in your space. Because here's why I'm so passionate about it. I know that what you do, you're an expert at what you do. You're really good at what you do. And I would imagine if you're listening to my show, you get a little frustrated and annoyed, even if you might not admit this out loud on your social media channels. You get annoyed when you see young little whippersnappers online who just started an account yesterday, who have no experience, but they figured out how to use TikTok or Reels, and they talk about your area of expertise, and they get people going crazy about it. And you're like, but you don't even know, bro. You don't even know. And it drives you bonkers. But this is where I come in. I know that your wealth of experience, the way that you help people, the way that you walk them through a process to get them real results, I know how powerful that is. I'm on a mission to help you share that in a way that resonates, help you actually show up and market your message by opening up your mouth to get you more confident, more articulate, more clear, connecting the dots. Because what I see with most of the people that come into my world, they're really good at their craft, but they are not great marketers. They are not great at communicating why their thing is so important and how powerful it can be for their ideal customers. I specialize at helping you articulate that with your voice, whether that's on video, in sales calls, conversations, from stages, whatever that looks like. When you talk about what it is that you do, I help you connect the dots for your ideal customer and your solution. Now, coming back to all of this, for me, it's so important because if I only focused for you saying you need to speak better on stages. If I only said, hey, I need you to if you want to speak on stages, let me help you with your voice. But if I only talk to you about speaking on stages, I would be missing some big context here. Because the fact is, it's not just about speaking on stages, it's using your voice all the time. So I actually give you a lot more context around the power of your voice. I give you context for why fear holds you back when you get on stage. I give you context for why you fumble over your words. I give you context for why crafting your message is actually going to serve you in a bigger way by ultimately serving your clients and customers. I give you context all of the time. And that context gets you to start thinking. And it's in your thought that you come up with bigger and better ideas to fuel your business. I went off on a rant right there, but I want you to hear me loud and clear. When I do my job and I get you thinking, you become more powerful. Let me say that again. When I do my job and get you thinking, you become more powerful as a business owner and as an influencer, as a leader. Your brain is a very powerful thing. And here's the thing. If I give you all of the ingredients for exactly how to sell on a webinar or exactly how to speak on stage, what's going to happen is you can follow that recipe step by step. But how I do it, how I am, how I communicate my life stories, my experiences, my craft is different than yours. So if you were to try to take exactly what I did, if I just taught you do these 3 things and you just did it, it would not work in the same way. Good, bad, or indifferent, we don't need to be the swipe culture that we're in. Swipe, copy and paste, make things easier, just follow my step by step. Honestly, I think all of that is kind of BS. Because if you are an entrepreneur, you're a creator, you're an idea generator. You have to learn how to generate these ideas in a way that serve your people, not just coming up with new tools and products and programs. You have to generate ideas on how to connect and help people take the next step. You have to learn how to think like a marketer. So when I bring you information, I'm always getting you to think bigger and think differently because I want you to be a better leader for your audience. And that is highly valuable. I could just show up here and teach you, here are 3 things to say on your next webinar. And I do that too, right? I give you those things, but I always give you context. My big mission on this show is to get you thinking so that you can generate the ideas to better serve your audience. Bringing back the context of webinars, one of the most powerful things that you can do is get your audience to be thinking in relation to your topic bigger too. Help them understand more about it. Then show them the path of how to actually achieve the results that they want. That is the main structure of webinars. You can probably flip back on this little rewind, and really hone that down and structure your next webinar. But I'm going to take it a step deeper on this. But I really want you thinking about that. I want to give you another example here, kind of outside of context, because for a long time, I resisted teaching webinars. I totally resisted, but I had so many people jumping into my program, Speak Up to Level Up. And one of the things we do is we do an onboarding process with all of our new members where I really want to understand where they're starting from and what they hope to achieve in 90 days. Like what is going to be a knockout win for them. And one of the things I see often, it's not a promise of the program, but one of the things I see is people want to build their signature talks so that they can craft a webinar and sell their programs. It's like, ooh, interesting. I always think of a signature talk as the thing that you talk about when you're on other people's platforms and you talk about on repeat. But what I started noticing was people were seeing their signature talk as the thing that actually sells. which is also true. So I had to start asking myself the question, because let me be clear, the reason why I was not teaching webinars was because I do not see myself as the sell from stage speaking coach. I'm actually kind of turned off by the whole selling from stage piece. Even some of my best mentors and coaches, I bought their $10,000 programs when they've sold them to me on stage. But I will tell you, when I handed over my credit card, I felt a little about it, because the way that it was pitched was just so contrived, so formulaic, so overdone, that honestly, if they would have done it a different way, I would have felt better about it. I still purchased. But when I think about, for me, when I show up for my audience, I never want someone buying from me because they feel pressured, or I don't want them to have any kind of like yuckiness. I only want them to have excitement and nervousness, right? When people invest, my program's not cheap. It's substantial, because I want you to actually become a better communicator, have some skin in the game, and know that this is not a simple, easy thing. You're going to get better over time. But I want people to feel excited about what they bought into. I want them excited about what they're going to create inside of my program. So coming back to this, people kept asking me, Heather, like, I really want to build my webinar. So what I did was I took what I typically fix when I work with my one-on-one clients. I work with a ton of one-on-one clients with webinars. And what I typically do is I fix broken webinars. That is my thing. Like one time I had a client call me the webinar doctor, because they keep bringing me their broken webinars and I would fix them. That's what I would do. So side note, if you have a webinar that's just not working for you right now and you're just like sick and frustrated with it, reach out. Let's talk about it. I can doctor up for you, help you figure out what are the things that are actually not working, and help you have a webinar that you feel proud of and effectively converts and makes people feel good. So side note, webinar doctor, phone in friend. Anyways, the reason why I'm bringing this up is I wanted to give you the context here. I was resisting the teaching this because I don't want to be the selling from the stage speaking coach. I want to focus more on helping you feel confident articulating the main messaging points of your business. So wherever you show up, whether it's on video, whether it's on stages, whether it's on a webinar, whether it's on Reels, whether it's on, like, I don't teach all those platforms, right? But what I teach you is how to actually trust your voice and stop second guessing and just rambling about all these different things. How do you actually know that when you communicate, you can trust your voice? Trust that you are connecting, that you bring a message that actually is going to resonate with your audience. That is my niche. I help good presenters become exceptional, right? People who are mostly comfortable in front of an audience. They like speaking, but they're trying to now use speaking as a marketing tool to brand themselves and grow their online business. That is my thing. Selling is the next piece of it. And here's the funny thing. Y'all are going to hear me start talking about selling a lot more in my brand and on my podcast, because I resisted it for a while because I didn't want to be the sales person. But what I found is a lot of people inside my programs were struggling with the webinar pitch. They were struggling with selling in general. And I had to own the fact that, y'all, before starting my business, for 10 years, my job was teaching business owners how to sell what we would now call high ticket stuff. So in the industry I worked in, if you're new around here, I worked in the audiology space for 10 years. That is hearing care doctors. So the company that I worked for was a management firm, and my job, I was the vice president of learning and development. My job was to lead the team of trainers, instructional designers, events personnel, and human resources, where we hosted live in-person trainings, workshops. I actually launched and opened their training center in Scottsdale. We had this whole training center that we built, created, and we had courses coming out of them every single month. And we had a whole online suite. And our whole mission was to help these doctors and their teams how to have better engagement with their patients, how to improve their marketing, how to improve their operations, how to improve their team dynamic, the hiring, the firing. We taught all these different business principles to help them. They went to school to be doctors, not to be business owners. So we supported on the business side. But the flagship program that my team taught was a program that was called Patients for Life. And it was a program that was an end-to-end system around the patient experience. How do you more effectively incorporate customer service into your business to serve your clients, in that case, patients, to make them feel good, but then to help them take the next step in their journey? And bear with me for a moment, because there's a reason why I'm telling you this story, because you're thinking, what does an audiologist have to do with me? Well, here's the interesting conundrum. Audiologists, or the other hearing care providers that we worked with, They went to school to be doctors or medical professionals. They wanted to help people. And how they help people was pretty profound. Myself personally, as someone suffering from a hearing loss, I am now significantly deaf. I cannot function without my hearing aids. It's like I'm a different person when I don't have them in because I can't hear and connect. It's just a very frustrating thing. In fact, right now, side tangent, my hearing aids broke about 3 weeks ago. So while I'm waiting for a part to come in with my audiologist, I'm wearing a backup pair of hearing aids, which is not programmed the same. So the last 3 weeks, I've been reminded of around all the freaking frustrations I have around not being able to hear things or hearing different sounds, or I can't connect my hearing aids to my phone or my TV, which I know these are very technical things I'm talking about, but I'm very, very frustrated. Here's my point I'm making. The patients that would come in wanting help from these hearing care providers, they had a hearing loss, and most of the time they were aware of it and they needed help. And the audiologist or the hearing care provider could help them. But the interesting that happens, you think, oh, somebody has a hearing loss, they would want help right out of the gate, right? But it's not just a logical decision of like, hey, here's your audiogram. You are significantly deaf. I can help you. Here's the solution. Even with that, it is not an easy yes for someone to say it because there's more context around it. For me personally, I knew I had a hearing loss, but I actually didn't understand how that hearing loss was impacting certain parts of my life. I didn't understand that it was making my husband frustrated as hell. I didn't understand that when I was at work and people were talking to me, I was missing half the conversation. So people actually started thinking that I was pretty antisocial or that I thought I was better than them because I was ignoring them. I didn't realize that, there were other things that had happened, right? I don't want to go this whole story. If you want to listen to more about my hearing loss, I talk all about it in one of the episodes around my hearing journey. I released it around Christmas time in 2019. So we'll link to that episode in the show notes. The reason why I tell you all of this is so many of you listening right now, you do something that's pretty significant. Maybe you're not a doctor, you're not helping people with their hearing, but you do something really, really well that helps someone improve their business or their life. And I know that you are proud of what you do. I know that you know deep down that you really help people. Whatever that transformation is, you help people. The challenge that you're having right now is most likely you're trying to make that argument in fact, in truth, helping someone understand just how bad their problem is. And here is your simple and easy solution. You can solve their problem. This was what was happening all the time with doctors. It's like, I just want to test your hearing and show you, here you go. Boom, here's the hearing aid solution. But the thing is, it's not just a logical decision when we say yes to something. Someone has to feel like this is a good decision for them. They have to understand context. There is emotion in the decision-making process. And in fact, we lead our decision-making with emotion backed by logic, not the other way around. So what I want you really hearing right now as I'm speaking to you, this is one of the big shifts, this understanding that it's not just about the arguing your logic fact. If you've ever struggled with the quote unquote fluff that people give in webinars, note that I don't want you to give fluff, but I want you to provoke thinking. We have to think bigger and broader because people need to be thinking about the problem and your solution in a larger context. You see, in the process that we followed with audiologists, we taught them how to have more effective conversations. They were called consultations. You go in, you say, hey, I'm struggling with a hearing loss. There's a series of questions and conversations. It was a sales process that we walk them through, leading to the patient accepting treatment. And I say this as an interesting thing. We're thinking like, oh, medical space. Well, the funny thing about hearing aids, most people don't understand that they're not covered mostly by insurance. Most people, especially if they get a more premium product, which are the ones that are going to connect to your phones and actually be able to be adjusted and all of that, right? That actually costs money out of pocket. And these things can cost $7,000 to $9,000. It's not a cheap investment. But when you evaluate what that will do for that person's quality of life, it's one friggin' steal of a deal. But if they do not understand how it's impacting them, they can't do anything different. I'm sharing all this with you is because people look at webinars as just a sales tool. But what I want you thinking about is webinars is an opportunity for you to help your ideal customer see the bigger context in a powerful way that'll help them take not just one step towards the solution, but take a leap. That leap may be them finally owning the challenge that they're having and finally get into action. That leap might be your program. That leap might be something else, and you can be okay with it. But when you start focusing on how do I help meet them what they are and help take them farther in the journey, that is when things start becoming more powerful. There is a reason for that, but we need to flush the toilet on this idea that our job is just like sales, 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 sales. Sales is a beautiful outcome of a webinar, and that definitely is the goal, but it's not the only goal. We need to be educating people, providing value by helping them think. When you start thinking in a bigger way, you start taking action. So my job isn't to tell you what to do. It's to show you what's possible. It's to provoke your thinking by asking you big questions to get your brain moving, because your brain is the powerful tool that you're using to grow your online business. You want to own it. Okay, let's dive in here. And I want to walk through some of these shifts. I know I went a little long on kind of setting up this context here, but I wanted to give you the greater context of why I'm so passionate about this series. We need to start asking better questions around webinars. We need to start thinking about just how we approach serving our audience and selling in general. And the more that we do that, the more that we get ourselves thinking and challenging, the better things we can create. So let's dive into the shifts I want to go over today. There are 4 shifts I want to walk you through. And this is designed to help provoke your thinking. And I want you to do this real quick. If you're out walking somewhere, if you're driving, if you are doing this while you're prepping your dinner, whatever it is, I want you to have somewhere. If you're driving, don't do this, but do it later. Open up your notes app. Open up a Google Doc, grab a journal and pen, and here's what I don't want you to write down what I say. I want you to be writing down. This is every podcast episode. Any thought time maybe it's from me or from someone else, when somebody says something that gets you thinking, write down your thoughts that come from it. What did that get you thinking? What ideas came? Make sure you're capturing those, because that's where the power is. And here's a bonus for you. You want your audience to do the same. Because the beauty isn't what you tell people. The beauty is what you can get people to think about. That is what's powerful as a leader in your business. That is how you create a true impact of people who are like, oh, they love you, they follow you, they're so grateful for you, because you don't just give them answers. You actually provoke thinking, which is one of the most powerful gifts you can give people. Okay, let's dive into these shifts. So shift number 1, and we're going to go through these ones pretty quickly, right? But we're at 25 minutes into this episode. We're going to hit all 4 of these. So number 1, shifts to make if you want to be doing webinars moving forward. This is the context. Number 1, I want you to recognize that what turns you off on webinars are not the same turnoffs of your audience. Remember that your audience is not you. This is something that I see happen so often to online coaches and course creators that venture into the space more and more. You start paying attention. Your newsfeed is filled with Facebook groups with other online creators, coaches, people who are like you. And then we start having all these conversations, talking with one another, and it starts skewing how we approach things based around the preferences of our peers and ourselves. Unless you serve other people who do exactly what you do, you got to flush the toilet. And remember that when you attend a webinar and you were instantly like, ugh, webinar, ugh. Is that the same for your audience? Or are you serving an audience who is not having this negative attachment to webinars? Are you serving an audience who is not annoyed by you encouraging them to come live? Are you serving this is your body check moment, gut check. Are you applying your own preferences to your decisions because you are so blinded by your own turnoffs that you are not appreciating the true preferences of your audience? I don't know what the right answer to that is. I think we can use what our own turnoffs are as a guide to question, but don't be so fast to dismiss different tactics or annoyances on things. Case in point, let me give you an example of something that I saw from 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗄 here recently. He was on the podcast a couple of months ago. Zach teaches challenge launches. He's got this awesome new membership that he started with in the last couple of months. And Zach was sharing with me, he also put this online. He was sharing with me that he hates the schmucky tactics, right? He questions all these things. He is definitely a thought leader in these questioning of what's working and what's not working. One of the things he was questioning was countdown timers. People were like, oh, it was like a trigger in emails of like scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. And so he actually asked his audience, and he's like, do you like them? Do you hate them? And he assumed people hated them because he didn't like them. And what he found out back was his audience actually liked countdown timers, not because they were forcing urgency, but it was data. It was actually like, oh, here's actually how much time you have. And then they were like, oh, I have 3 days. Okay, I have some time. Or, oh, you have 12 hours. Oh crap, I gotta like move it up. They appreciated the countdown timers because they saw it as information that helped them either move quickly or whatever, right? But he had a different perception. He was like, that was so eye-opening. And I want to use this example. I want you to think about, what is it for you of something that you're like, oh, my people hate that. Is that true? Or are you applying your lens to that? So for example, in webinars, I'm just going to give you a very specific one that I hear. If you hate in the beginning of a webinar when somebody's like, let's think of a funny one. Somebody's like, and stick around till the end, because if you do, I'm going to share you all about my free guide for blah, 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 blah. It's my announcer voice. If that totally bothers you, instead of just completely getting rid of it, I want you to ask yourself the question, does that bother your audience? Could you say in a different way that would help them? The whole point is teasing a fast action bonus, right? To get people to stick through the webinar. Does it actually turn off your audience? Is there a different way that you can say it? Start asking it. I'm not telling you what the right answer is here, right? Because I think you'd be successful with it. I think you could be successful without it. My challenge for you is to start questioning what turns you off. Now, here's the thing. This is actually backed up by science. If you've ever heard of the reticular activating system, oh yeah, we're going to talk about brain science here for a moment. Did you ever play that game as a kid? It's called, we called it Slug Bug, but I can't remember. There's another thing that people heard about, Volkswagen bugs, the cars growing up. If you were a child of the 80s like me, you played this game with your siblings that every time you saw a slug bug, a Volkswagen bug, you got to punch your sibling. And what's amazing is when you're not playing this game, you don't really notice Volkswagen bugs on the road. But if you were on a road trip with your siblings and you are playing slug bug, you bet your brain hones in and sees every freaking bug on that road. And you're just like, wham, wham, wham. Youngest of 6 kids. I was a little one. You better bet that I was like right on top of it. I was like queen of that game. What's funny is, you probably noticed this too, right? When you are let's say in the market for buying a new car, all of a sudden you start seeing that exact same car everywhere. People use this metaphor and example all the time. What's happening here is your reticular activating system. It's a part of your brain that is the filter for how you bring in all this information. You're seeing, hearing, consuming so much like data and information throughout the day. Your brain, to conserve energy, has to like put up these guards to say, oh, like all of that's extra. It only lets through the things that are relevant contextually to you and what's actually important to you. Okay, how does this actually apply to what I was just talking about with webinars? The thing is, if you are always talking about what annoys you on webinars, what annoys you in sales tactics, what annoys you in the online space, you are only going to find things that annoy you more. I'm going to say that again. If you are participating in the conversations, if you are focusing and complaining about all the things that are annoying you in the online space around why marketing sucks, you are only going to see more of it. And I see it all the time with people. It's just fueling more and more and more griping and complaining around what's so broken. If you're participating in those conversations, I don't say that to like be like, poop on you. I'm just saying, is it possible that your reticular activating system is helping you see more of that negative because you were honed in on it? How does this apply to you right now? Well, I want you thinking about, if your reticular activating system, your brain, is specifically looking for all the ways that marketing sucks and why it's gross and why it's schmucky and blah, 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 blah. I mean, not to undermine, I do agree with all of that. But if you're focused on that, you have a little bit of blinders on that is impacting how you're marketing to your audience right now. So this shift number 1, I want you to take the blinders off and start asking the question, is my vantage point the same as my audience? Or have I honed in on something that annoys me and I'm now pushing it on my audience? I don't know what's true for you, but I want you to explore it. Let's move on to shift number 2. This is a big one. Shift number 2, if you want to be successful navigating webinars, in my opinion, in the next year and moving forward, you must stop shunning or shaming your audience for not showing up live. Stop shunning or shaming your audience for showing up live. There is an emphasis in the online space, and it's taught in courses right now that what you want to do is get people to attend your webinar live. And of course, this happens, right? Because studies show that conversion rates for a live audience are higher than people who watch the replay or don't watch it at all. It's just statistic after statistic shows that. We know that to be true. However, there's another data point. The majority of people do not show up live. In fact, I think the standard conversion right now for people, like a show up rate on a webinar, which is the number of people who register versus actually show up for a webinar, the average is about 25% who show up live. That means that 75% or 3 out of every 4 people will not show up live. So I have 2 schools of thought on this. Number one, we can do everything in our power to get more people to show up live. Maybe we can get that rate up to 30 to 35. I've had show up rates as high as 55% with a smaller audience. It's well and great. And I will say that when they show up live, they convert. But I also want to challenge you on this. If you are putting all of this emphasis to show up live, show up live, show up live, and even if you are exceptional, only half the people show up live, what is the experience for the people that don't? Again, this is just a question, but it is my bet that moving forward, the people that start asking that question and start honoring the experience for the people who don't show up live, those are the ones that'll cut through the noise, cut through the BS, and they will start making traction next year. Now, don't misunderstand me when I hear this and say that that means like, oh my gosh, don't worry about the live piece. Worry about the live piece because that's where a huge part of your conversion is. But I want you to start asking some questions and saying, okay, so I'm going to address this for the people who are live, but how can I also create an exceptional experience for people who don't show up live? What questions can you ask? Okay, how can you ensure that when you're doing it, you're also honoring the people watching the replay? So could you have a way that you address that when you're talking to the camera? Just like how I teach when you're doing Facebook Lives, shoot it for the replay. So I honor, and hey, if you're watching the replay, type replay in the chat. That's super cheesy. You don't have to write that on your webinar. But like if you're talking to someone, having them do an activity, call out your replay people. Hey, and if you're catching this on the replay, I want you to write this down for yourself too. Because taking the moment to explore this and blah, 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 give them a reason for writing it down. But you want to engage those people. Let them feel valued and seen, that they are important too. Because here's the fact of the matter. I think a lot of people are quick to say, oh, I just want to focus on the engaged people, the live people. I don't know about you, but I don't really attend webinars live, like ever. And I know I just said your audience is not necessarily you. So if this is you too, you don't want to make this a fact, because I have I have a good percentage of my audience who love coming live with me. And part of it is because it's meta, right? You're seeing me speak about speaking. So there's kind of this, I want to experience it live kind of thing. So I honor that, but I also honor that I know people in my audience have full-time jobs. They are busy parents. They have stuff that comes up. Some are caretakers. There's all these different things. And I don't want them to feel any less seen, any less connected to my content just because they weren't there live. I said before, I'm on a mission to help more entrepreneurs share their story and better take what they do so well and connect it with their audience to help more people. That ripple effect matters to me. So I want to serve you whether or not you were on the live webinar. And I think if you start asking this question and make that shift for yourself, you're going to start asking better questions. And leads me to my tip around here. You need to start prioritizing the experience for your entire audience. And doesn't mean you need to customize things. It doesn't mean you need to do a bunch of extra things, but just start asking the question around what's happening beyond the webinar. Whether that's a show up sequence to get more people live, whether that's a better landing page when you send people the recording. Maybe that's as simple as taking your Zoom recording and spending the time to cut out that dead air for the first 15 minutes. Maybe it's adding controllers to your video so people have more control over it. I don't know what the right answer is for you, but I want to challenge you to start thinking about, it's not just about following the process of do the live webinar, have the thing. It's also about asking, how can I best serve my audience, the live attendees, but also the replay? And I think people who ask these questions about how to improve the overall experience for their audience, those are the people that are going to start standing out above the rest. Shift number 3, focus on context, not fluff. And I'm going to go breeze over this one a quick, because I already talked about this at the top of the episode. But what I mean by this, right? There's this belief right now that when you do a webinar, you have to do this like generic housekeeping. You're in this is for you if, then give them like a put all your pens or put all your distractions away. And then we go into, here's my big old long story, followed by like the shifts, the mindset pieces. So you gotta believe that you're an expert. You gotta work smarter, not harder. We've been to webinars where it feels like there is a lot of fluff. I want you to really ask yourself the question around, what is the context that my audience needs to know? And what do they need to truly believe in order to get results, in order to be open to my solution? That is the question we have to give. So what's the context? A great example for this, I was talking about context with the recognizing that your turnoffs are not those of your audience. And I talked about the reticular activating system. Man, that's a mouthful every time I say it. But that was context. It's giving you context to why we feel the way we do about webinars. It's giving you context to provoke your thinking. The shift number 2, all of these things, quote unquote, are context. They're all mindset. They're all, quote unquote, could be perceived as fluffy. But when I'm actually making you think, and it's rooted with examples, and it's directly tied to the pain points you're having, solutions that you desire, do you see how this becomes less fluffy and more helpful, valuable information? I want you to start asking yourself the questions, where do you feel fluffy in your webinar, and how can you anchor that down to be more contextual, to be helpful, to provoke thinking? We're going to go into this a lot more next episode. So if you're still going, I'm not quite sure yet, stick with me. In the next episode, I'm going to help you walk through how you actually anchor down value versus fluff to actually create conversions. Let's move on to the last one, shift number 4. This one, this is totally a mindset thing, but I have to say this for you, because for those of you who are listening right now who are maybe feeling a little bit burned out, maybe you've done a launch or two, maybe you haven't even done your launch yet. You haven't even done it, and you're feeling a little bit resistance to it because you're feeling burned out because you've been creating content. You are living your not best life on the hamster wheel of content creation. You're creating the blog posts, or maybe you're doing podcasts, or whatever platform you're doing, right? But you're creating, you're crafting, you're putting all this stuff together, you're putting all this free stuff, but it's not paying off. People are not actually paying you for it, or not paying you enough for it. You're undervaluing your services. So you're not quite confident yet in how to talk about them. You want to get the experience. So maybe you're charging a lot less. Maybe you're doing work for free. What's most likely, this is a word of caution I want to give you. Check in. I want to caution you on resentment with free content. Appreciate and value your audience fully. This is my shift. I want you to shift to appreciating and valuing your audience. If you're finding yourself feeling resentful when you create free content, if you're feeling any of that at all, or you put all this work into a launch and it doesn't pay off, and you get really just like frustrated because, and maybe you don't voice it, right? And I'm confident that you would never voice this, but maybe you're feeling it. The words that you might not put on it, but you're feeling resentful that they're taking advantage of your free content. You're doing all this work for them. You're helping them solve all of their problems, but they are not buying from you. And it's causing resentment. And if this is not you, this shift, you don't even need to worry about it. But what I want you thinking about is, and maybe it's not so direct, right? Where you're like, I'm mad at my audience. I would hope that's not the case, right? But where you're starting to feel a little bit burned out, I want you to just pay attention to that and ask yourself the question, am I starting to be a little resentful? Am I feeling burned out by content? And I hear a lot of people using this in their marketing. Like if you're feeling burned out by the content wheel, if you're feeling whatever, right? Then the secret is something else. I don't have a secret for you other than this. I want you to bring awareness to it. And I want you to really tie back to what's your goal here. And not just your revenue goal, not just your sales goal, not your, I want to create a better life for my family goal, but I want you to think about your legacy goal. And I said legacy goal around who you want to be as a thought leader and as an authority in your industry, in your niche. I really want you to ask the question around what is your long-term hope for the legacy that you provide to your industry? And I know this is kind of like one of those big why questions, but what I want you to remember is you are on a path to serve and help your audience. There's a reason why you chose your niche. There's a reason why you chose your topic. There's a reason why you keep showing up and serving, because you want to help people. And you're still trying to figure out what that breakthrough is to help them. And we're going to anchor it down and start figuring out what's the language that you're using, what's the messaging, how are you focusing more on that marketer role versus that teacher role? It's a big thing that I talk about around here. But I want you to catch yourself. If you ever are kind of starting to feel resentful, remember that your audience doesn't owe you anything. They don't owe you anything. And they don't even have to be outwardly grateful and pouring out like, oh my gosh, you're so kind for giving me all this free content. At the end of the day, your audience views you, yes, as a mentor, but also it's a business relationship. How many times, like, you think about this, you don't go to Target being like, oh, thank you so much, Target, for these amazing dollar bins. Like, no, there's a commerce transaction. There is a business transaction. But a lot of times, especially as personal brands, as solo entrepreneurs, we view this as acceptance and rejection. And what I want you to remember is at the end of the day, their audience, I think 𝘀𝗺 put out a post this last week around your subscribers are not giving you a gift with their email address. No, you're not giving your subscribers a gift when they opt in, right? You're not like, here's your gift, here's your freebie. It's not really like that. They're actually giving you the gift of their email. They're actually giving you the gift of you showing up in their inbox. And I love this shift so much. I want you to remember that people giving you their time, if they show up to a webinar, they opt into a webinar, regardless if they show up live, they are raising their hand and they're giving you their email address and they're giving you their time and attention. And that is one of the most valuable things. And whether or not you can help that person completely solve their problem, to completely transform their lives, that's not up to you to decide. They get to decide how deep and far they go with your content. They get to decide what their next step is and how much of a priority this problem is in the context of their whole life. It's your job to keep showing up. It's your job to keep reminding them that you'll be here, that you're here, you're their partner, you're here for the long game. You're not just here to make a sale, but you really want to help them in their journey. That's one of the things that I feel like I do a really good job of, is I show up every damn week for you. Regardless of if you buy from me, regardless if you become a client, regardless if you post about it on social media, though I hope you do, I'm going to keep showing up because I am so rooted to my mission of helping more women, more entrepreneurs get comfortable owning their expertise, articulating it, and making a change in the world, starting with their one client at a time. That for me is, I think, if more of us had the confidence to articulate our ideas, articulate our thoughts, show how we can actually help people, I think the ripple effect on that would be just astounding. I'm passionate about that. So I'm willing to look at this as a long-term thing. For me, when I started the podcast, the only reason I started it was I said, I'm only going to do this if it's going to stick around. This is something I'm actually going to do. I'm going to go all in. It wasn't like I'm going to try podcasting. It's no, I'm going to build a podcast that can help change the life of the entrepreneurs that give me the gift of putting me in their ears. That sounded weird, but you also laughed at that if you're one of my people. So that for me is a long game. So the shift, this fourth shift here, I'm tripping over my words. I don't know how to best articulate it, but I want you to remember what an honor it is for you to share your message. What an honor it is for you to be able to hold a microphone to speak in their lives. Do not forget that. Yes, we're going to work on helping you get paid by more people, but the goal isn't for you to sell your program or product to everyone. The goal is for you to keep showing up over and over and over again. So when the right person needs your message, you're there. That's the goal. We so often talk about, oh, how do we get a higher conversion rate? How do we get a higher conversion rate? But I was reading a book last month, 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗆, with Denise. Oh my gosh, I can never pronounce her last name. I can't remember her last name. But if you've read 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗆, it's awesome. We'll link to the book in the show notes. She talked about this one stat that I'm going to leave you with today. She talked about the 1% rule and how when she started owning that, how powerful it was. And she talked about how in the online space, when it comes to conversions on anything, you can expect about a 1% conversion rate. She goes, sure, the averages can go higher than that, 2 to 3%. But if you just say, you know what, I'm going to convert about 1% of my audience into sales. You can choose to be totally deflated by that and be like, oh man, all this work and effort to only get 1% of people. Or you can choose to go, 99% of my message is going to be getting out there and just speaking, I hate this term, but speaking my truth, speaking the things that light me up, that can serve, that can help. And that 1% is out there and I'm going to help them. And my job is to continue to show up so they can find me. And when you do that, if you get 2 to 3%, 5%, 10% conversion rates on things, then you can be delighted because you exceed expectations. And I want the goal for you to get a higher conversion rate. But I think what we need to be focused on is it's not always about making a sale. It's not always about sliding people through a funnel to get to the ultimate end thing. The fact is, the majority of the people that you serve will never pay you money, but you never know the impact that it'll make. Maybe they'll become a high referring customer. Maybe they're going to tell you about all their friends. Maybe you save their life in a moment. Maybe you allow them to step up to a certain situation with confidence. You see, the thing is, I show up every single week and talk to you. I show up these webinars and help people with their speaking challenges. I taught the free speaking workshops last month. I'm working on a new freebie to help you sound more professional and get rid of your filler words. I'm doing all these things. And the truth is, I don't know how 98% of you use it. I have no idea. I have no idea if what I'm speaking about right now is resonating with you or not. And I love the words of encouragement, sure, that come back in. But I know at the end of the day, I don't know you specifically, but I know who you are. I've studied my people. I've talked to you guys all the time on Instagram. I talk to those of you inside my programs. I know you. I know what you're challenged with. And my commitment is to continue to show up and keep talking to you. I appreciate you. I honor you. I honor the struggle that happens when it's hard doing these things. I honor the perceptions we have. I don't fast forward through these things, but I challenge you each and every week. And I really want you thinking about this in the context of your free content, but especially in your webinar. Your job isn't to convert 100%. Because I challenge you that if you converted 100% of people in your webinar, you're probably going to have people who are not the right fit for your program. You do not want everyone. You want the right people jumping into your program. So the more that we honor that, the more that we respect that, and the more that we show up for ideal person, the more that content is going to work like a magnet. Okay, this was just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to webinars. Like I said, next week in episode 123, we're going to talk about the secret to creating webinars that actually create value and convert. And then in episode 124, I'm going to share with you my top 3 scripting secrets for authentic and effective webinars. And hey, if you want to learn more about webinars, if you are interested in kind of talking about what your selling situation is, come send me a message on Instagram. Let's actually talk. If you want some feedback around your selling mechanism and what webinars look like for your industry, I'd love to voice chat and talk with you. So join me over at @theheathersager on Instagram. And be sure, if this episode resonated with you, if you feel like this would be valuable to another online entrepreneur, would you share it with them? Share it with them and tell them that, hey, this chick, she's a little cuckoo, but she's got some good stuff to say. The more you can share it with your friends, the more it'll help the show grow. And it just means the world to me. Thanks so much for showing up with me today. I hope that you took a couple notes for yourself to help you take what you thought about and put it into action. And I'll see you again next week.